Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We're super interested to hear everyone's thoughts on this particular read. For the start of our event tonight, your mics and your cameras will remain off, so please use the chat and let our panelists know what you're thinking. Ask us your questions. If you do want to chime in at any point during the discussion, you can go ahead and use the hand raise function on Zoom, and we'll temporarily turn your mic on. It's totally not a requirement, just an option. We also have another really awesome shop local giveaway. It's stocked with some stuff from some of our favorite local shops, and I'm actually going to announce the winner at the end of tonight's discussion. And then, we say this every time, but we really do get to work with the best partners, our local bookstore partner, Dog Ears Bookstore, and of course, our main event partner, Project Best Life. Thank you so much. We look forward to each and every event that we do with you guys. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Danielle Osher, editor of Ruffalo magazine and one of our panelists tonight.
Hello, how is everybody? Well, as Emma said, we are excited to be here, and if at any point you want to chime into the discussion, raise your hand and we will work you in as one of our wonderful guest panelists. I want to start by first giving a shout out to our wonderful book club partner, Project Best Life. Earlier this year, we put our heads together and thought about how we could partner together to bring a little happiness and healthy habits into everybody's lives during what has been, of course, a very hard year. And that is how this book club was born. Project Best Life is an initiative by Roswell Park, who of course understands how important and special life is, and it is focused on helping you live happy, healthy, well-balanced life. You can head over at any time to Project Best Life to find a host of helpful resources. They do podcasts, newsletters, blogs, with just tips and concrete information about little things you can do every day to make decisions for a healthier life. So thank you to our Project Best Life partners. And with that, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Danielle, editor of Ruffalo magazine, coming to you from North Buffalo, and a mostly white room, but I did manage to get some artwork up. Joining me tonight are Tiffany and Jen. I'm going to ask them both to throw their cameras on and introduce themselves. Tiffany, start with you.
Hi, everyone. Here from North Buffalo. I'm the social media manager for Ruffalo magazine, and I'm really excited to talk about this book with the rest of the panelists and read what you guys have to say in the chat, because I definitely have some very strong feelings about it. Jen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Rung. I work with both Danielle and Tiffany. I'm lucky enough to work with both of them every day at the Buffalo News and Ruffalo magazine. I'm the former editor of Ruffalo magazine, so super excited to still be a part of things there.
Yes, Jen, never gonna let you fire. I still call you editor at large, Ruffalo magazine. So, and also just shout out, because we have some real girl power here going tonight, and I love that. Obviously, this is an opportunity for everybody, but I love to see a group of wonderfully talented women together, which I actually think is kind of the perfect segue into our book for this evening. The concept here was September, so it was a pretty tough transition of Buffalo, as evidenced by the weather this week. It's already feeling like the middle of fall, beautifully crisp, but for that last little hope of summer, we thought, why not get fun with it, pick what is billed as a beach read, and a light and breezy read at that. I will kick us off with my favorite open-ended question. What did you think of the book, everybody? Jen, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I thought it was a great beach read. I think my main thing I felt all through, and especially when I got to the end, I felt as if I were reading a movie script. Just the way things were, kind of the way the scenes were set out, the dialogue felt very like snappy and I thought the dialogue was actually great. It reminded me, I don't know if there was any Gilmore Girl fans out there, but it kind of reminded me of that a little bit, just like very smart, clever, snappy dialogue. But for that very reason, like more like a movie than a book, maybe there was more dialogue than probably like character background.
So I actually know exactly what you're saying. Not a ton of narrator work on scene establishment, scene setting, descriptions of any places except for like, yep, they're at Palm Beach, it's hot. It really was definitely, that's a really great point. Very focused on that. And, you know, I agree. For what it was a beach read. I actually read it in 2 days, and I'll jump ahead to a question I was gonna ask later, but like I both had a hard time getting into it, but also just like plowed through it because it was just so light and fluffy. Like it didn't require a lot of energy. When we compare it to our last book club book, A Mystery, like that requires a lot of brain space to follow along. This one, I felt like I could skim it, half pay attention, and still pick up 100% of what was happening. I thought it was absolutely comical, the way that they describe working in the magazine industry. I mean, I wish somebody wanted to pay for me to go to Iceland. That would be fantastic. And, you know, I don't know, how do I describe it? Both harmless and and cute and eye-rolly all at the same time. And incredibly predictable in a way that I thought was like, okay, I don't hate it, but it never surprised me. It ended kind of exactly how I thought it was going to. Sure, there's a couple twists in there that you're like, what? Did not see that coming. But not from like a plot perspective or a development perspective, just like a really random like tidbit that they would throw in there. Tiffany, how about you? What do you think? Be real.
I was reading the chat, and I saw someone say like they did like the different things, what they liked and didn't like. I definitely did not really like this. I'm not super into, someone said chick lit. I love that. I forgot that was a term, but definitely not. I'm way more like, I like fiction, but like not this, you know. I also like the thriller version, but for me, it was really hard to get into it. Like I was doing the same things that I usually do, like reading it at night, like having some like nice tea. And then it took me over 2 weeks to get to 3 chapters. Like every chapter just felt so long, and it just felt very surface. And I just didn't really like the characters. Poppy also, so also I put in here, that was my cat Poppy, not named after this book Poppy. The cat Poppy came before book Poppy, but did not really like Poppy. And I agree with, I don't know who said it, but that they liked, Jennifer, that you liked Alex more than Poppy, which I agree. I feel like Emily, the author, wrote her to be this like quintessential millennial, like wannabe influencer, like writer, but made her just feel like very vapid and not really like she had much substance. And then Alex was kind of the opposite. And so and I agree, we were talking before we started, but Jen mentioned that, you know, like immediately thinking that she stole it from When Harry Met Sally. And even up to like the ending where she pulls the like, he says, they say no, and then he runs out after her the same way at the New Year's Eve party. And then that whole thing, so it was just like down to the like end mix, she kind of just like made it a millennial version of this. I didn't read the full, I like had to skip around after like 150 pages, and when it didn't really go for me well. So I read the ending and some in the middle to make sure. So yeah.
I mean, well, that's honestly, and someone threw it in the chat here. It's why I love book club, because, and we talked about it before, it makes us start books we would pick up, books we'd never pick up, stay with them to see if we like them, and even skim and jump through the end where I think normally we just put them aside and retire them. Chicklet, very outside my usual reading, and I did sort of like the breath of fresh air. I did bookend reading this book. I read Agatha Christie before and after it, a little bit of a different contrast. And so for that, I did like it. I agree with you, Tiffany. I did find as a millennial to read about a very stereotypical cliche millennial that like she got so close to so many points that resonate, but never far enough to make them really deep and meaningful. And I just kept being like, oh yes, like this notion that you are hustling really hard for this job, and then like what happens when you've achieved that goal, or you finally get that really nice apartment and you can put furniture in it, but it doesn't feel like a space that's lived in, or like running away from things from your past. Like I thought she hit a lot of things that could have been really relatable, but in the sake of keeping it light and breezy, just said like, okay, cool. Like that
Yeah,
works.
like touched on it and then never went back and never went even deeper. Because I even thought that when she opened up to him about like her being bullied in school, and like that I feel like that would have like could have opened up to so much more of like a deeper realization of like who she is and like why she does the things that she does. And like they could have probably gotten to the points that they get to after like 250 pages to be like, this is why I have fear of like opening up, and like did not have friends and all this stuff. But it was just kind of, I think like you mentioned, very much like she's obviously trying to get a book deal and is trying to make it as just like going to get all of those kind of quintessential with like chick lit like things that will become a book. I mean, become a movie in there.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we might like the movie better, right, Jen?
Yeah, I think so. I really feel with the movie, like I wanted to see the movie instead. But yeah, like even it was hard, like because even, you know, she had so much angst about going back to her hometown, and some of it was the bullying, and then some of it was like her parents and her family, who actually seemed awesome, like they were amazing, like because they were a little eccentric, like that seemed like it was sort of this big problem, which was, I don't know, it didn't seem as hard. Someone else made that comment too, like her background and experience, her reaction to that seemed a little over out of proportion to her actual experience, or at least the way it was presented.
Absolutely. And as editors on this too, I do agree. The dangers of when you pick books by reading their descriptions online and not by walking into a bookstore. When we ordered these books and they arrived, we all just kind of did one of those moments where we're like, how thick is this book? I think that she could have used a little bit of a stronger editor on this one. There was a lot of, I'm not a very fast reader. I know this about myself. And there were times where I was just like, skip like a whole 3 pages because none of this is adding layers. And that's okay. Yeah. I do think though, you know, with the right character, I was thinking about this a lot when we were talking about it being a movie, you know, cast the right lead role. And that's the kind of intrinsic nature an actor can bring that really adds that depth that I think a lot of, like I was missing, and that, you know, look behind the eyes that brings meaning to some of these encounters. So stay tuned. If they ever do make this a movie, we'll do a book club outing.
Totally.
See what we think. I wanted to dive into Alex and Poppy's dynamic a little bit, you know, and the way this book is structured with flashbacks, you know, the very intentional narrative of like, you learn things as the narrator wants you to get more context. Starting off with that first introduction in college, which is funny because when the writer like sums it up, it's like, they had an off-putting first impression, and you're like, or is that just how like most meeting people in college is like? It's just like random personalities thrown together. But, you know, it is an interesting way to discover kind of both how their relationship together evolved over the decade, but also stayed kind of exactly the same, with so much that they refused to acknowledge or say, both to each other, but also to themselves, which I thought was really both interesting, but also I think the reason that I so furiously read it, because I was like, are they gonna just like speak to each other yet? And I was like, okay, no, halfway through the book, still not there. What did you guys think about that?
So I actually liked the flashback, but then it was very, I think what was getting to me was she was so obviously trying to make this woman Poppy like a funny, likable character. And it actually made me feel the opposite. Like how she like tried to make her seem like she was so funny and she was always having making jokes at like Alex's expense. I'm like, that actually doesn't make you a really like funny or like good person. Like you're kind of using like, I don't know, like you're kind of actually being mean in some ways, like especially when I think it kind of like was getting to him when they met up in Palm Springs and she kept like making jokes about their hometown and like being small from Ohio and like making fun of his profession and like the people that he works with, because it's like you're quintessentially making fun of him because that is his life that he is in. And like, yes, you're in New York City and all this stuff, but it was just kind of like, and then the author was writing it as if like he was in the wrong. Like it was like very much like pro Poppy, I felt. And so it was like obviously trying to like make you really root for her. But for me, it was the exact opposite from like pretty much the beginning of the book. I was kind of like, what is going on? And just like, can people have a normal conversation? I was like, people do not go at each other like that. Like that is not normal. Like, especially like every conversation. Like it's like a quip here or there. Like, yes, I'm totally that way. Like quoting movies, music, whatever, but it's not like a zinger, like professional comedians don't talk like that. So it was just very weird the way that she kind of did that for her. But again, obviously trying to get a movie deal. So
yeah, I liked we talked, some people chatted about this already, but I thought Alex was much more likable than Poppy. Like he just seemed to have some depth and a little bit more soul maybe, and some reasons for like the things he did. They seemed more developed, like his background and maybe his motivations, and he seemed much more three-dimensional, I think.
I agree. And for me, I kind of thought it offhand at the beginning, like, okay, Alex understands himself as a character, you know, and is comfortable in himself enough to live some truth. And when I first met Poppy, I was like, oh man, she is not self-aware at all. She is living what somebody once told her a life of a 20-somethings is supposed to be. And then I kept reading it. I was like, oh my God, is she really this like unself-aware? Yes. And then you get to the end and she has this like slow but fast, considering it took her 12 years to get there, epiphany of like, wait a second, like maybe all the things I've been thinking aren't actually the way I've been thinking. And like maybe my jokes about his values are super mean and not cute and pithy like I mean them to. And it's like it's interesting because she never really acknowledges it, but to me, I got to the end and it was like the crumbling of the front that she had been showing for over a decade. And even with the person that she claims like knew her the best and that she could be comfortable with, is she was just so caught up in like, this is the person I want to be and the person that I think is cool, as opposed to just like being who she was. But I also wrote down a note for myself because, and Tiffany, you touched on it, is the narrator has a role, right, in trying to set expectation and tell the reader what you should think, the details it's giving you the perspective to have. And I was like, Poppy is mostly the narrator. And so we are getting that skewed perspective of her. And so, you know, her view of herself, as well as her view of everybody else's decisions. And I found it a little grating because I was like, I could use a little bit of a break from this perspective on life that is so just like, you know, not developed. And somebody put it in the chat that they wished their relationship had developed earlier on in the book so that we could have seen some more growth. I agree with that, mainly because I would love to have seen Poppy's perspective grow. It happens like right at the end, right as they're closing it up, and then you get the flash forward and you get none of the payoff of like the relief of her understanding and her seeing things with multiple layers. I mean, even when you think about the ending and how she plans this giant romantic gesture of how she's going to go to the high school and then, oh, he's not at the high school, I'll go to the bar. And she's just so focused on basically curating the experience. It's not even just like having an honest moment, though that's part of it. It's also like, how can I do this in the most dramatic, amazing, like shareable manner that'll make everybody super impressed.
Very cinematic.
Yes. Oh yeah, has anybody in this chat read Beach Read? Did you see that?
I did not read it.
Yeah, I haven't read it. I'm curious about it.
Yeah, if anybody reads it, let us know. Let's talk about Palm Springs for a second, because I did sort of, you know, when you talk about one of those classic narratives of like, we're going to use a vacation as a way to explore things and reassess life or escape life, and then she has all of these, I thought it was really interesting, all the expectations that she puts on this one trip. Like it can somehow, and honestly, when you learn more, the expectation they put on every trip, like one vacation a year can do so much and solve kind of neglecting, fixing things in the other 11 and a half months. And then they go to Palm Springs and have what's like a pretty comically like domino effect of bad things happening. And yet pushes them to the brink to actually like have a moment of honesty. I thought it was both interesting and also like a little bit of a roller coaster, which I guess is the point. It is chick lit. Did you have any favorite parts of the Palm Springs storyline?
That's actually one thing that I really liked about the book was kind of like, okay, things are finally going to get real, right? The vacation got real, like most people's vacations are not, you know, these all expenses paid, you know, 5-star hotel, like incredible experiences that, you know, no one else really gets to experience. It was like fairly typical of like the mishaps that can happen on a regular vacation. So like everything was stripped away, right? And then like the same thing with the relationship finally, like most everything was finally kind of stripped away for them to be real with each other. So I sort of like that symbolism. I thought that was interesting and a good way to kind of set that scene or that background for the sort of pinnacle of their relationship development.
Yeah, I agree. I did like the Palm Springs section. I will say her moving her like flashbacks kind of got me sometimes. Like if I wasn't paying attention, I guess like I'm actually a fast reader. So like I'll like go through. So like at one point I didn't read the top where it was like, you know how it was like 4 summers ago or like 3 months ago. So I got mixed up for like an entire chapter, realizing like what I had to go back and I was like, oh, this was from 4 summers ago, because I don't remember a specific one, but it was when they were in Palm Springs and she was talking about something and I was like, wait, this happened just now? And then I was like, okay, no, this is from 4 years ago. So that made sense. So that definitely did throw me off a bit. But I did think that it was a bit more, it was like how you could tell that the author was trying to make Poppy really funny. I feel like the bad things that happened in Palm Springs actually were funny. So like I was not actually like, she wasn't getting the comedic effect from like actually Poppy. And like, who knows if she actually did write her to be like super unlikable, but like, I feel like her mirroring it off of Meg Ryan's character and Harry Met Sally, she was not, she thought that was writing her as a really, like likable character. So I thought that it was like really funny. And when they kind of got through like the car and then getting to the apartment and just like everything went wrong, you definitely know you've had that feeling where like you've booked a trip or like done something and then it's not what you expect and you're like, I know that I did it right, like I had to go, and like sees it and then it's like, oh, it's a pull-out couch, or like, oh, it's this. Like that was I think like the really like main section where I was like, okay, I can kind of relate to this a bit more than like any other part of the book so far.
Oh yeah. It's like that brings up, so many memories when you're like, wait, but the reservation. The car also got me, and the reoccurring just smell from the car and the car giving them trouble. And then, yes, the compounding of like, it's just a day. That is totally how the universe works. Like, you have no AC. The thing you want to go to is closed, and then you get a flat tire, and you are just figuring it out. And it is, travel is such a huge part of this book. It's like the underlying character. And I thought that the Palm Spring storyline did such a great job of capturing that, like, so much of the experience you have on a trip has to do with who you're with and the outlook that you have about it. And if because you can't make everything perfect, and sometimes you lose your AC and you have to turn it down one little button at a time. And those moments where Alex and Poppy kind of let the situation just laugh and like kind of break down the barriers, and Poppy's not quite so worried about curating the perfect sentence or comeback, and she's just kind of in that moment living it with him, I thought was really sweet. I also thought she did a good job of capturing that like emotion. Like when it was tense, like you would feel the tension and the awkwardness or the guarded nature of the characters or the frustration, and so while she, didn't do a ton of descriptiveness, like that is the one thing I picked up was kind of the emotion that she was trying to get across.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Agree. She definitely was able to build that tension out. And someone is mentioning in the chat that they think that based on her like making it similar to When Harry Met Sally, that she made Poppy to be the unlikable one, like Harry was, because she talks about how much she didn't like Harry in that section. But I definitely thought that she was like trying to make that as like Alex, because I felt like she was trying to like kind of make him a little like boring, or who knows. I didn't see that. I don't think she clarified which one. If someone else knows, let me know. But
you know what, Julia, it's a good reminder. I literally never read the forewords or the afterwards in the books. Like I always skip right through them. So it's good to know somebody read it and that there was interesting tidbits hiding in there. Has everybody in the chat seen When Harry Met Sally? Like that, we've all seen that, right?
Well, I thought it was odd that she referred to it, and there were so many similarities. Like, I mean, even the fact that they met at college and they road tripped home, and that's how they got to know each other. Like it was exactly the same. And then, over the years and maturing into their, becoming almost 30. And I don't know. I thought that was maybe just a little too close for comfort. Did anyone else feel that way?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, a little strange. When Harry, someone said I never saw her when I read When Harry. It's such a great movie. I recommend it. And that's like my generation's people we meet on vacation, probably. It's a great.
I mean, ours too.
But yeah, it stands the test of time.
It's a really great movie. Definitely.
Apparently it's streaming on HBO. So go stream it on HBO for free.
It's such a good fall movie, and it's freezing right now. So definitely. Which is so funny because we were like, oh, like a nice kind of like summer beachy read, but I was like already kind of like, I'm already in like fall mode. Like I want to read, especially thinking about the similarities between Harry Met Sally, where it's all like fall in New York.
Yeah.
You're right. It is very fallish.
Sheila, let us know what you think when you watch it. One of the other things I found interesting, we touched on this a little bit, is there is a really strong subplot for Poppy about her hometown. So, and Alex for his hometown, and which I think represents sort of that exact two ends of the spectrum, is that draw of keeping roots where you grew up versus that immense fear of ever returning, escapism. And then, how the author used that as a way to sort of at the end accent Poppy's journey a little bit by finally getting her back to her hometown and realizing that it's not actually the place, it's the sentiment, it's the emotion that she has tied to it. I do actually think, you know, when we talk about stereotypical millennial plotline, that one is one, I think that is very, very relatable. But I also thought it was a little extreme. I don't know. I'm curious what you guys thought about that element.
Yeah, well, I have that experience. So I grew up in Hamburg, moved to New York City, you know, couldn't wait. I couldn't get there fast enough after college. Like it was, you know, I was going to be there the rest of my life, and didn't, you know, never thought I would come back, but found reasons to do so. And it didn't take that long. Like, so that felt a little bit extreme. I agree. It felt a little bit extreme, like the reasons, like based on, you know, what we kind of talked about before, or alluded to before, that they didn't seem that like overly deep reasons for not wanting to go back to your hometown, especially as an adult and a successful adult, right? Like most people, I think, who hate high school, like can't wait to go back and be like, I'll show them, like, look what I'm doing. I'm traveling the world and writing for this, you know, fabulous travel magazine. So again, I think there was a little bit of a disconnect there, and maybe it didn't totally feel authentic, her reaction or her extreme reaction to that. But I don't know, that's, you know, one person's experience.
No, I kind of felt the same way. I didn't live in New York City, but I lived in Boston for 3 years. And I was like, I feel like it was I feel like the author did not have a similar experience. And I feel like she was writing from a space where like trying to get that across, but in like even some of the bullying stuff, I was just like, what is going on? Like, it doesn't even sound like I guess it did, but it just felt very forced compared to like some other plot lines and stuff. Like when you think of different books that kind of bring that in, and again, I think I mentioned earlier, like I thought that she would kind of get more into that, and like the explanation would come of why she is so deterred from going back and that kind of thing. But it was just, I think that like once again, I skipped around a lot. So, but from like that, when she has that talk with Alex and then they don't talk about it, like I feel like that's how so many of these things go. One of them tell a story and then neither of them really respond to it. They do their little like quip thing and then the scene like ends. Like she said that to him and then he made a little quip of like, I bet you rocked that bowl cut. Like it feels like they're always talking about how deep their relationship is, but I'm like, in the book, you're not actually showing us how deep the relationship is. It seems very like surface, even though it starts when they haven't been talking for a long time. But even in the throwback, thought like those memories, it doesn't seem as like meaty and deep as she makes it seem.
Yeah. You know, the one that stuck out with me was when he does a little throwaway of like, oh, I'd kick your bully's butt. Like I'd beat him up. And I was like, is that like, if they had that genuine emotional connection, like it also felt kind of out of character for Alex, who overall feels like a very thoughtful, you know, genuine person. And I was like, that's the only response you could come up with to that, is that you beat him up. Okay, cool.
Well, and when they were having that conversation over text and she like called his student a bitch, and I was like, that was so weird. Like you are talking about like teenage, like I was just like, oh, and then she was like, oh, that felt like weird. And then they didn't talk about it. I was like, what is going on? Again, like you're not making yourself seem any more likable in these moments.
I will say shout out to Barb in the chat for throwing in the pneumonia scene where she gets pneumonia and it's Norway. Thank you. I said Iceland. He comes to see her instead of going on the trip. You think it's unbelievable? I don't know. I think that Jen to me was pure rom-com. That's the scene where it's slow-mo and her haze of beautiful staged New York City apartment, and there's tissues everywhere, and it's like hazy, and she opens the door and it's like halo effect and music, and he's holding like Zabar soup.
Yeah.
Like that's when I read that, I was like, yes, okay, that's where we're going. More or less believable than the vasectomy, which also got thrown into the chat.
Yeah. It was the weirdest part of the book, for sure. Like, or the most implausible, in my opinion. Maybe not the most.
Can you do a book double take? Because I'm pretty sure I did something like, what?
But also
super
like,
random.
Random and like people you mentioned. So I didn't read that part because it was one of the parts that I skimmed through. But when you mentioned that, yeah, but when you said before we started that it was because she had a pregnancy scare with someone else, like some men are choosing to have vasectomies in their relationships. So as like, instead of women having to get IUDs or be on birth control because it's worse for women, like the effects than that. So like if they were in a relationship, I would have been like, okay, but that is wild that he would get that because she had a pregnancy scare. Like that is so unrealistic.
Yep.
Right. Well, especially because the whole book was about him wanting to have a family someday, right? I mean, like, it was just so out of character also.
I did like that, but he threw, well, don't worry, I saved some just in case something goes wrong on the reversal. And you're like, that is where this book needed an editor, in my opinion. Just cut that whole part out and nobody would have missed it. Granted, we wouldn't have a funny thing to laugh about or text people about, but maybe that was her intention. I'm not sure. I also thought it was interesting as a reaction because it is so emblematic of how she wrote this character's dynamic, which is they never actually say what they're thinking to each other until the very, very end. He didn't say one, he showed his support through actions and then they moved on. Like you said, Tiffany, where it's just like, and scene, cut to the next. Never actually is like, I'm here for you. It'll be okay. I mean, he does it a little bit, but he's not like, at no point he's like, that's terrifying. I'm really glad that everything's okay. This made me realize there's consequences to things in life. Like he just bottles it all up inside and then decides to go get a vasectomy and then tell her about it like 6 years later. So, I mean, I will say though, because I am also this way, I don't need everything to be super realistic or believable. I think it's just that it was so random and thrown out of nowhere and then walked away like nothing was done. And I was like, she did that a couple of times in the book. It's like, boom, totally unnecessary, random thing to distract you. And now we're back to what we were doing.
So, and I agree. I'm trying to see who's my like Zoom chat is being weird. I think it was Julia saying like in romantic comedies, like you expect things to be unbelievable, but it's like unbelievable, but then like going against the characters, like values that you've built up throughout the entire book. Like that's where it is kind of just, it takes you, I feel like it takes you out of the narrative that in the scene that she set where it's like, all about his like family, like wanting to have kids and like wanting to get married and all that stuff that she's been like plopping in like in the plot throughout the entire book. And then just like all of a sudden like switches. And it's, I think it's also like them not having, it's not like they were talking about like, oh, she never wants to have kids. Like it's a difference between someone being like, I'm not sure. And like, no, I already know that like, I'm not meant to be a mother. Like, I don't want to have children. And so that was like also a thing where you could have kind of, it would have been a little bit more believable for Alex's character that she had written, that he did that with some other, I think, explanation or like more of a deepness of like a more of like the story behind it instead of just kind of like surprise. There are a lot of surprises moments.
Right. And I wonder if that was supposed to be like seen as this like massively heroic act. Like this is how much he loves her and he would, go against everything he ever always wanted. Like, and I mean, to such an extreme measure, but it just didn't land that way. It just landed the opposite way. It's just weird.
Yeah. I will say if this becomes a movie, I'm most looking forward to her friend Rachel and Rachel's mom, the therapist, because I was like, that will be a hilarious side supporting characters. I really enjoyed, setting aside that Rachel's profession is to just go out and eat things and take pictures of them and how that pays for her New York City apartment. But as a Sex and the City fan, I have no problem just chalking that one up to a New York City storyline. And, I just thought that was really fun. And the way that they talk about her mother, I thought was just really cool. And is actually a stereotypical millennial thing that I liked, which is that like, we all to some degree either have a therapist, are related to a therapist, or can like through one degree connect you to somebody.
So interesting.
I know. I would love to cast that as Kristen Ritter, but I realized that we've already aged out of the demo for this movie.
Wait, who cast as who?
Kristen Ritter as the friend Rachel.
As Rachel? Oh, I thought you were talking about as Poppy, and I was just like, wait, why? No, I love Kristen Ritter.
Just have her pop up as the friend that's like, girl, please.
No, that would actually
Call a therapist.
If you haven't seen the TV show that she was in, it was the Bee, Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23. And it got canceled, I think, after like 2 seasons, but it was like perfect television. Very good. A little side moment.
Yes. But James Vanderbeek is in it as himself, which I think is just
it's so funny. It's so funny. I feel like last book we did like a kind of casting. That was like the last, or not last book because I wasn't here. But the other one we were like talking about who we would cast. Who would you cast for the main 2, Alex and Poppy? Pop it in the chat. Have thoughts as well. Sorry.
Yeah. I want to hear what everyone says before I had I think it's my lack of knowledge of 20 to 30-year-old actresses. Like, who is the 30-year-old version of like Drew Barrymore for Poppy? But maybe because she annoys me. I don't know. Like she's so over the top and like overly styled and dramatic or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Everyone I'm thinking of is about like 5 to 10 years to 30 years too old. Can we just get Meg Ryan back and redo and just not remake it, just relive when Harry met Sally?
I had someone in mind. Okay, so what about Alex? No, everyone is like, I'm like racking my brain. Britney Spears. She's also out of, so how old are they supposed to be when they go to Palm Springs?
I think right around 30, like like 29 or 30. They're like up on the cusp of 30, I believe.
Okay. That's what I thought. I also am thinking of all people that are like 5 years, like over. Oh, you know who could actually also play her friend? Megan Fox.
Fun.
I was just like thinking of who was like around that age, and I'm just like, oh yeah. But for guys, I feel like maybe like Taylor Swift's boyfriend.
Chill out, yeah.
I also don't know. I'm such a in the 90s, I was all about like the older people. So I'm legitimately thinking, because you know who could be, but she's like older, Kirsten Dunst.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and then I would do Mark Ruffalo, because as a person who loves the movie 13 going on 30, he's like my ideal rom-com male character.
Is Alex a blonde though? Is he blonde and blue eyes too? I can't remember.
I still wears khakis. That's all I remember. From
the khakis.
Yeah, preppy khakis. Oh, or James Marsden. But he's also a brunette. They could just totally do away with that, because I don't remember a lot about the character, like how you mentioned earlier that they didn't do a lot of like setting the scene of like the characters and like them as who they are, other than the khakis.
I'm seeing all the names in chat. I wish I knew who some of these actors were. I don't.
Adam Scott. Oh, he's also in Big Little Lies on HBO.
Oh yeah. I could see that for Alex, like kind of strong, silent type.
Oh my God, this is really racking my
Intelligent.
brain. I feel like I know so much pop culture and I'm like really having a hard time on who they could be.
Tobey Maguire, that's a good one.
Yeah, I feel like there are not a lot of like blonde guy actors around that one. Like everyone, I love that everyone is putting in like definitely like brunette, like older guys.
Yeah, I know. Everyone's like 40 or older. It's really funny.
So there
I
is
was just thinking about,
guys, they don't ever dye their hair. Like it's like very seldom that guys like actors, or they could, I guess, put on a wig.
that's a really good point. I can't remember the last time. I was also trying to think of like who are all these male actors and all like the made for Netflix rom-coms now,
Yeah.
which I love, but have never heard of any of them, but they're definitely the new wave of A-list celebrities.
Oh, a bald character, that would be really funny. Yeah, oh my goodness, I'm so out of touch. Maybe also don't know. We would make
I am
great casting.
curious because because I just looked at the time, my gosh. Yeah, and this is our last book club of the year. You know, thinking about this book and all the books that we've been lucky enough to read this year, kind of where it ranks, but also, you know, heading into the holiday season, if you want to gift anybody a book club read, like what was your favorite?
I love the
I
Matt
know.
Haig book. Yeah.
Midnight Library?
Mhm. Thank you for reminding me of the title. Yeah.
I really liked the Pride and Prejudice version.
Yeah.
I also Pride and Prejudice is like one of my favorite movies. So I'm like, I feel like I just like got it, like understood.
Yes.
And it was, yeah, I liked it.
Did you happen to read anybody here? Because I did the second book in the series. So Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors, our first read of book club, was the first of a series. They released the second book this year.
Oh.
I believe it was called Recipe for Persuasion, again, based on Jane Austen's Persuasion. Nope, Sense and Sensibility. I can't remember. There's 3. You can Google it. They are unsurprisingly, well, they're great reads, but per usual, first book is the best book. Second book's not bad. Third book is like, okay, I got, spoiler, it reads like grocery store romance novel.
Oh my goodness.
I was reading the third book, I was like, wow, this one a little bit left. But Pride and Prejudice and Other Flavors, also one of my favorites. So I'm glad that I've read all of these books, honestly, and really pushed me out of my book comfort zone, which I really liked.
Yeah.
And also helped me read more. I noticed that like once I get in the habit, which book club helps, you know, I fell out of the habit and then I'm like, wait, book club's coming up, gotta sit down and read this book. It's so much easier for me to just immediately be like, oh, book's over. Wait, I'll just rent a new one and keep it up. And I think I'm on my 3rd book after reading this one. So I'm hoping to extend that into the holiday season. And I finished this book like a month and a half ago. We picked it for book club and then I just like immediately read it in 2 days. And
but truly, all of these books truly for me became so much more interesting after we started talking about them. I don't know. I think there's just so much to unpack and for better or worse, right? And like to hear all of your perspectives and perspectives from the people, you know, from the chat and everything. It's really neat to see what people kind of respond to and connect with and don't, and you know, on the opposite side, dislike. And that a lot of it ends up being, you know, pretty universal.
Yeah. I just love talking about books. I'm also the same way where I like always want to talk about like the movies I'm watching or the TV. So like with the books, I feel like I always like when I'm done want to be able to hear and like if other people felt the same way as me, because I'm always like in my head like, I wonder if anyone else felt like this. Like that's why I immediately will Google the book and like the reviews as soon as I'm done with them. Same with TV and movies. But I have definitely really appreciated being a part of book club. Brianna in the chat, I'm glad that you were able to come to the last one, and hopefully we will see what comes in the new year.
Yeah, I was going to asterisk that last one of 2021, because, you know, we're all heading into a crazy couple months. but I completely agree with you both. This has brought a whole new level to reading for me that I've been really grateful for. I have never been a part of a book club before. I've always wanted to. I've done my share of wine and cheese nights, just never talking about an actual book. And it also makes me really want to, which we did a little bit this year, but I definitely one of the things I'm thinking about for next year is kind of picking books that are favorites of book club members so that we can share favorite books with each other and also use it as a new way to discover. I mean, we did a throwback read last time and I really liked doing a throwback read. There's so many wonderful books that have been written, and so you know, in our search for what's new and what's next, sometimes it's more fun to look backwards and share things that stayed with one of us, and so that we can collectively as a group enjoy that, I think would be really cool. So forgive us because we always do this plug, but I genuinely mean it. Share book recommendations with us in the chat now, in the survey after, or on our Facebook group. We really want to see them, and we do our best to also collect them so that we can share an overarching reading list with everybody. That was one of my favorite things about the fact our book club was going to be tonight, is that tomorrow I'll have a lot of books to add to my queue in the library. And so the one I'll throw out there for you all is Garlic and Sapphires by Ruth Reichel. It is one of my all-time favorite books. I have bought so many copies for myself and I just keep giving them away to people to read, and I don't even care that they don't come back to me, because you know that's a really beautifully written book. So if you've never read it, add it to your list. And maybe we'll read it in 2022 book club if I have my say.
I've read it. I loved it. That was like 20 years ago, I think, right? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great book.
I have to add it to my list.
She was the last editor of Gourmet, the food magazine, the very beloved food magazine that was shuttered back when magazines hit their rocky point. And she writes about her experience. So it's a Ruth Reichel actual real story of her moving to New York City to become the food critic for the New York Times, and how from LA, where she was the food critic, and how she ends up dressing up in costumes because everybody in New York, they have plastered her photo in every restaurant kitchen. And in doing so, she channels her mother and ends up exploring this kind of dynamic that she had with her mother through this really fun, crazy experience of getting dressed up to eat at restaurants. But also for everyone who was here for the first book club, yes, I love food. So a very food heavy book as well. And she has recipes in it that she shares, which I think is really cool.
Wait, I love that. Can you say the name of it again? I know
I'm gonna throw it in the chat.
Yeah, I'm like, you're gonna send out an email too, but I'm like, I love those. I actually just read a really good review of this randomly this afternoon, and I was like, I like reading restaurant reviews because it gives that little, like they have the perfect mix between like educational but also like kind of shady, and they're like kind of funny. Like they all have that little like comedic side to them.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And if you guys read it, please tell me what you think. And then again, as we said, we'll miss you dearly, but we do, you know, we're just pausing. We'll see you then the new year. And so all the ideas, suggestions, things you'd like to see book club grow into, you know, we're a community. So please share your thoughts. We couldn't have such a wonderful experience without all of you. And I see Emma is eager to tell you guys who won goodies. So Emma, you want to take it away?
Yes, definitely. A great way to end our last book club of the year. So our winner is Jennifer Smith. Congratulations. We're going to shoot you an email early next week so you can coordinate when to come grab your goodie basket. You can kind of see a sneak peek of it there on the slide. There's some really awesome stuff from our favorite local shops in there, so we're so excited for you to enjoy it. I know that I'm jealous of you. But there's still more to go around, so we're gonna have our usual shelf love swag bags for 10 lucky attendees tonight, you'll also hear from us in your inboxes if you've won that. That's really it for me. Again, thank you so much, everyone. We had so much fun tonight. We're looking forward to being back in 2022, but in the meantime, you can keep in touch with us. We'd really love to hear from you. You can subscribe to Project Best Lives newsletter and also keep up with Buffalo Magazine on social media. Danielle mentioned this, but we'll always also be sending out a survey and always appreciate the feedback. We really do take it into consideration and look for ways to make our events better and better each time. Danielle, any of the other panelists have anything else?
You bet. Let's get a huge shout out for Emma, our voice of Buffalo Magazine and fantastic production superstar who makes book club happen. And of course, our chat room guru, Jody, who's bringing back that AOL experience that we all desperately miss. We could not do any of this without the awesome team here and without all of you. So I feel incredibly lucky to be surrounded by great people who love this event as much as we do. So thank you all so very much. And of course, to my fellow panelists, Tiffany and Jen, and Sydney, who we love and was not able to make it here with us, but is forever part of book club. I just, when you try something new, you never know what to expect. And this has been such an incredible experience for me. And I'm so grateful for you both for the role that you play in it.
Thank you. I'm so excited to see what the new year brings for book club.
Yay. And then, because it wouldn't be Buffalo Magazine if I didn't give a quick shout out, we are hosting an event on October 14th at the Martin House where you can come shop local with our favorite vendors, eat some amazing food, have some cider donuts courtesy of Fairy Cakes, and do self-guided tours of the Martin House at sunset. There are 2 tickets left. So we're thrilled. If you want to join us and be that last 2 tickets, we will get that into the chat for you and would love to see you there. And it should be a really fun evening. We'll all be there too. So here you go. And in the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful fall. It feels weird. I don't want to say holiday season, it's a little too soon. So enjoy the leaves turning, get some apple cider, and snuggle up with a book and a candle, and we will see you soon. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.